"You'll ruin your life," my father said, forcing the pen into my trembling hand as I lay in the hospital bed, my body still raw from childbirth. I remember how the ink smeared through my tears as I signed away my daughter. For 20 years, I maintained their perfect façade. The dutiful daughter who'd had a mental breakdown in high school, now a successful photographer living the life they'd planned for me. Every birthday, I'd bake a cupcake for a child I wasn't allowed to know existed. Take a self-portrait holding it, documenting my grief in secret. My parents thought they'd buried that mistake forever, using my father's judicial connections to create an airtight adoption that could never be traced. They never imagined she'd find me anyway. Never dreamed we'd walk into their 40th anniversary gala hand in hand. Mom's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor when she saw my daughter's face. My face, staring back at her. "Impossible," she whispered. But there we stood, 2 decades of secrets about to collapse like a house of cards. You see, powerful people forget one thing. Truth doesn't stay buried forever. And a mother's love, even one they tried to erase, is the most dangerous force of all. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The bathroom tile felt cold against my legs as I sat there, staring at the plastic stick in my trembling hands. 2 pink lines, clear as day. I was 17 and pregnant. Downstairs, the clinking of wine glasses and polite laughter from my parents' monthly neighborhood dinner party drifted up through the vents. Mom's famous beef Wellington would be making the rounds right about now. Dad refilling glasses with his carefully selected Cabernet while discussing property values and school board politics. Emma Wilson, honor student and dutiful daughter, was about to shatter their perfect world. I pressed my hands against my still flat stomach. Inside was Tyler's baby. Tyler Adams, with his worn leather jacket and motorcycle that made my father's jaw clench whenever it rumbled down our pristine suburban street. "That boy is trouble," Dad would say, not bothering to lower his voice even when Tyler was picking me up for one of our parent-approved study sessions at the library. Those sessions that usually ended with us parked at the reservoir, tangled together in the back seat of his car, planning our escape from this suffocating town after graduation. "We'll go to California," Tyler would whisper against my hair. "I'll work construction with my cousin while you take photography classes. We'll live in a tiny apartment by the beach and be free." It had seemed so possible then. Now, those dreams felt like smoke slipping through my fingers. When the last guest finally left that night, I walked downstairs on wooden legs. My parents were in the kitchen, Mom wiping down already spotless counters while Dad loosened his tie, pouring himself one last whiskey. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Can it wait until morning, honey?" "It's been a long night," Mom said without looking up. "No." The finality in my voice made them both turn. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Dad's whiskey glass shattered against the wall, amber liquid running down the designer wallpaper like tears. "What did you say?" His voice was deadly quiet. "Richard, please," Mom whispered, her hand fluttering to her throat. "I'm pregnant," I repeated. "About 2 months." "That motorcycle trash," Dad spat. "I told you he was no good." Mom sank into a chair, her face ashen. "What will people say?" "The Hendersons' daughter just got into Yale. The Miller's boy is interning for a senator this summer. And our daughter is... She couldn't finish, dissolving into sobs. Dad paced the kitchen like a caged animal. Judge Richard Wilson, respected by the entire community, feared in his courtroom, now faced with a scandal in his own home. "This is what's going to happen," he finally said, standing over me. "You'll be sent to stay with your Aunt Patricia in Minnesota. People will be told you're helping care for her after her surgery." "Aunt Patricia?" I frowned. She lives in Florida. Not. That aunt, Mom interjected. My cousin Patricia. You met her once at a funeral. I later discovered Aunt Patricia was actually Peaceful Horizons, a facility for unwed mothers tucked away in rural Minnesota. A place where girls like me disappeared until their problems were solved. You'll have the baby there and give it up for adoption. Then you'll come home, finish school, and we'll never speak of this again. Dad continued, his tone leaving no room for discussion. This mistake will not derail your future. No, I said, standing up. I want to keep my baby. Tyler? Dad laughed, a horrible sound. Tyler won't be a problem anymore. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? His father just got a very generous job offer in Arizona. They're moving next week. I ran for the phone, but Dad blocked my way. Your phone privileges are revoked, as is your internet access. This situation will be handled my way. That night, I lay in bed listening to my parents argue downstairs. Words like reputation and damage control drifting up through the heating vent. I placed my hand on my stomach and whispered promises I already feared I couldn't keep. Thoreau. Next week passed in a blur of locked doors and monitored bathroom trips. Mom called the school to report I had mononucleosis and would be out indefinitely. My phone was confiscated, my laptop removed. I became a prisoner in my own home. My only ally appeared unexpectedly when Grandma Eliza arrived for an unscheduled visit. She took one look at my pale face and red-rimmed eyes and knew something was wrong. "They're sending me away," I whispered when we had a moment alone in the garden. "They're making me give up my baby." Grandma's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "History repeating itself," she muttered. Before I could ask what she meant, she pressed a small flip phone and an envelope into my hands. "Hide these. The phone has my number programmed. The envelope has enough cash to get you to me if things get worse. This isn't right, Emma. No matter what Richard says." The next morning, Grandma was gone. "Your grandmother wasn't feeling well and decided to head home early," Mom said, not meeting my eyes at breakfast. 3 days later, I was bundled into Dad's Mercedes at dawn. Mom didn't come, claiming migraine but unable to hide her relief at not having to face what was happening. We drove for hours, Dad speaking only to answer business calls, acting as if his pregnant daughter wasn't sitting right beside him. Peaceful Horizons looked nothing like its brochure. The converted Victorian house had bars on the windows of the upper floors and a reception area that felt more like a processing center. Forms were signed, money exchanged, and suddenly Dad was walking back to his car. "Dad, please," I called after him, panic rising in my throat. "Don't leave me here." He paused, straightened his tie, and without turning around said, "This is for your own good, Emma. Someday, you'll thank me." That was the last I saw of him until the day I gave birth. Peaceful Horizons was run with military precision. Wake up. Calls at 6 a.m., communal meals where we weren't allowed to discuss our situations, classes on proper feminine behavior, and counseling sessions that were nothing more than indoctrination about why we were unfit to be mothers. "Girls like you need a fresh start," Mrs. Blackwood, the director, would say. "The greatest gift you can give your baby is a proper family." At night, I would lie in my narrow bed and whisper to my growing belly, using the forbidden phone from Grandma to try reaching Tyler. His number was disconnected. I tried mutual friends, but no one would talk to me. It was as if I'd ceased to exist the moment I left town. The other girls became my lifeline. Sarah, who planned to run away after delivery. Melissa, whose boyfriend didn't know where she was. Jessica, whose parents had caught her with another girl and decided pregnancy with a donor was the cure. 7 months passed this way, my body changing while my spirit wore down under the constant pressure. Then, 3 weeks before my due date, I went into early labor. The pain was unlike anything I'd imagined, made worse by the clinical detachment of the staff. No hand to hold, no soothing voice, just clinical instructions to push and breathe. After 14 hours, my daughter entered the world with a cry that shattered something inside me. "It's a girl," the nurse said flatly, quickly wrapping the baby and moving to clean her. "Wait," I gasped. "I want to hold her." "That's not advisable," she replied, but a younger nurse took pity on me. "Just for a minute," she whispered, placing the tiny bundle in my arms. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, a tuft of dark hair like Tyler's, my nose. I named her Hope in that moment, though I knew the name wouldn't follow her. I memorized every detail of her face, knowing these minutes were all we might ever have. 2 hours later, they took her to the nursery, promising she'd return for feeding. Instead, my father walked in, accompanied by a man with a briefcase. "This is Mr. Reynolds," Dad said. "He has the adoption papers." I was still groggy from medication and lack of sleep. "No, I've changed my mind. I want to keep her." Dad leaned, close, his voice low. "Sign the papers, Emma, or I'll make sure you never go to college, never get a job in this country. Your life will be over before it begins." "You can't do that," I whispered, though I knew he could. A respected judge with connections throughout the legal system, he'd find a way. "The adoptive parents are waiting," Mr. Reynolds said impatiently. "Lovely couple, both doctors. Your baby will have every advantage." With tears blurring my vision, I signed where they pointed. Each signature felt like I was cutting away a piece of myself. "Where is she? Can I say goodbye?" I asked when it was done. "She's already gone," Dad said, straightening his tie. "Clean break is best for everyone." That night, I curled around the hollow space in my body where my daughter had been and wept, until there were no tears left. The young nurse who had let me hold Hope slipped in and placed something in my hand, a tiny hospital bracelet and a single Polaroid picture. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is all I could save for you." 2 weeks later, I returned home, expected to step back into my life as if nothing had happened. Mom had redecorated my room, removing anything that might remind me of my time away. My old clothes hung loose on my post-pregnancy body. "You've lost so much weight from that mono," she said when neighbors inquired. "But you're on the mend now." The halls of Jefferson High School felt like a foreign country. Friends had moved on, forming new alliances in my absence. Rumors swirled. Nervous breakdown, rehab, secret eating disorder. No one guessed the truth. Emma, Madison Clark, once my closest friend, waved half-heartedly in the cafeteria. "We saved you a seat. Lunch was an exercise in pretending to care." About prom committees and college applications while my breasts ached with milk that would never feed my baby. I excused myself twice to cry in the bathroom stall, pressing my forehead against the cool metal door. Home was worse. My parents had perfected the art of selective memory, creating an elaborate fiction where the past year never happened. Family. Photos were meticulously arranged to show the perfect Wilson family narrative. Vacations, holidays, school awards. A story without rupture or loss. "Harvard sent another brochure," Mom said over dinner one night, sliding the glossy pamphlet toward me. "Pre-law would be perfect with your debate background." I pushed it back. "I'm not interested in law." "Don't be ridiculous," Dad said without looking up from his steak. "With your grades and my connections, you're a shoo-in." I said I'm not interested. My voice was louder than intended. Dad's knife screeched against his plate. "After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "You mean like forcing me to give away my baby? Like that?" Mom's water glass toppled, spreading across the imported tablecloth. "Emma!" "We do not discuss that incident. It's behind us now." "It's behind you," I said, standing up. "It will never be behind me." That night, I applied to State University of New York's photography program, as far from pre-law and as far from home as my savings would allow. When the acceptance and scholarship letter arrived, I left it on the kitchen counter like a declaration of war. The night before I left for college, Mom found me packing my camera equipment. Photography isn't a real career, Emma. You're throwing away your potential. I continued wrapping lenses in soft cloth. You can pretend I never had a daughter, but that doesn't mean she doesn't exist. Somewhere out there is a little girl with my eyes and Tyler's hair, and someday I'm going to find her. Mom's face paled. That door is closed, for everyone's good, including hers. You don't get to decide that anymore. College became my sanctuary. Professor Janet Reynolds recognized something in my work during freshman photography. The empty swing sets, the mothers and children shot from a distance, always observing, never participating. Your images carry grief, she said during a portfolio review. There's something you're working through here. She became the first person I told the whole truth. We sat in her cluttered office long after hours, empty coffee cups between us, as I unspooled my story. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes about time healing all wounds. Some losses reshape us forever, she said instead. The question is whether we let them destroy us or fuel us. Under her mentorship, I channeled my pain into my work. I volunteered at a portrait studio specializing in newborn photography, a form of beautiful torture and healing. Each tiny face I captured through my lens was a stand-in for the daughter I'd lost. On Hope's first birthday, I baked a cupcake with pink frosting, stuck in a single candle, and took a self-portrait holding it. It became my ritual, a birthday, cupcake and portrait each year, documenting my grief and growth, creating a visual timeline of absence. Relationships came and went. Brad from my photography seminar, who couldn't understand why I withdrew when things got serious. Michael from the campus newspaper, who called me emotionally unavailable after 3 months of dating. Ethan, who came closest to breaking through my walls before ultimately walking away, frustrated by the invisible barrier I couldn't explain. There's something you're not telling me, he said during our final argument. Some part of yourself you won't share. He was right, of course. How could I share the most important part of myself, motherhood, when my arms remained empty? After Ethan left, I finally sought therapy. Dr. Lisa Wagner specialized in adoption trauma and spent months helping me navigate my grief without drowning in it. You experienced a profound loss under coercive circumstances, she said during one session. Your parents invalidated both your loss and your right to feel it. No wonder you're struggling to form connections. Holiday visits home became exercises in emotional endurance. Dad had been appointed to the federal bench, his career ascending while my mother's social standing grew alongside it. Their Christmas cards showed a smiling, successful family. Dad in his judicial robes, Mom on charity boards, me airbrushed and posed with my camera, my accomplishments carefully curated. During Thanksgiving my junior year, I discovered something that shattered even our fragile peace. While searching for spare batteries in Mom's desk drawer, I found a folder labeled with my initials. Inside were periodic reports from someone named Susan, detailing a child's development, first steps, first words, preschool progress. My hands shook as I realized what I was holding. They had been tracking my daughter without telling me. I confronted Mom in the kitchen, waving the papers. How could you keep this from me? Her face hardened as she snatched the folder. You had no right to go through my things, and you had no right to information about my daughter that you denied me. Mom's palm connected with my cheek, the slap echoing in the spotless kitchen. You will never mention that mistake in this house. Your father saved your future. Show some gratitude. I packed my bags that night and didn't return for 2 years. Photography became my salvation and eventually my career. I specialized in documentary projects about family separation, foster care, deportation, incarceration. My first book, Invisible Children, featured black and white portraits of parents and children separated by systems larger than themselves. When it gained national attention, my parents called for the first time since our fight. This attention-seeking behavior needs to stop, Dad said, his voice cold. People are starting to ask questions. Good, I replied before hanging up. As Hope's 18th birthday approached, I found myself increasingly restless. The legal barriers to contact would soon dissolve, but the fear of rejection paralyzed me. What if she hated me for giving her up? What if her adoptive parents had told her I'd abandoned her willingly? On her 18th birthday, I finally registered with an adoption reunion registry, leaving digital breadcrumbs for her to find if she ever searched. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. The first concrete step toward a reunion I both longed for and dreaded. I never expected how quickly that step would bear fruit. 2 years passed after I registered with the adoption registry. I'd moved to Boston for a teaching position at the Massachusetts College of Art, while continuing my documentary work. My loft apartment overlooked the Charles River, its walls covered with prints from my travels. Everything perfectly arranged for a solitary life I'd convinced myself was fulfilling enough. The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Subject: line. I think you might be my birth mother. I stared at my inbox for a full minute before my trembling fingers could click on the message. The laptop screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. My name is Lily Anderson. I was born on April 15, 2003, at Peaceful Horizons in Minnesota. I've been searching for my birth mother for 3 years and believe you might be her. If I'm mistaken, I apologize for the intrusion. If not, I'd very much like to connect with you. I collapsed onto my couch, unable to breathe properly. For 20 years, I'd imagined this moment, crafted perfect responses in my head, rehearsed what I would say. Now that it was here, words failed me completely. It took 3 hours and 4 drafted responses before I simply wrote, "Yes, I'm your mother. I've been looking for you too. I would love to talk whenever you're ready." We arranged a video call for the following evening. I spent the intervening hours alternating between cleaning my already immaculate apartment and staring at old photos, wondering which features she might have inherited. When Lily's face appeared on my screen, time seemed to stop. She had my high cheekbones and fair skin, but Tyler's deep brown eyes and the slight dimple in her left cheek when she smiled nervously. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, so similar to how mine had been at her age. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Hi," I echoed, wiping away tears. "I'm sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't cry immediately, but..." "It's okay. I cried for an hour before calling." She laughed, and I recognized my own laugh in hers. "This is surreal. Completely surreal," I agreed. "You're so beautiful." "I look like you," she said. "I've been staring at your book jacket photo for months, trying to find myself in your face." "You found me through my work?" She nodded. "Photography professor assigned Invisible Children. The moment I saw your photo and read your bio mentioning, 'You grew up near Minneapolis,' something clicked. I'd been searching for 3 years with almost nothing to go on." As Lily spoke, she explained the roadblocks she'd encountered: sealed records, missing paperwork, constant redirections. Her adoption had been handled through a private attorney rather than an agency, making traditional search methods nearly useless. "It's like someone deliberately made it impossible to trace," she said, frustration evident. "The adoption paperwork lists my birth mother as Jane Smith. Not exactly helpful." "That was my father's doing," I said quietly. "He's a federal judge now. Back then, he was a county judge with enough connections to ensure everything was buried." "Why?" The pain in her question broke my heart all over again. Because appearances mattered more than people, Because my pregnancy was a scandal that might have damaged his career. Because he thought he was doing what was best for me, even if it meant destroying part of me in the process. I told her everything. The forced confinement, the coerced, adoption, the years of silence. With each revelation, her expression shifted between shock, anger, and deep sadness. "I always thought you gave me up willingly," she said finally. My adoptive parents, were told you wanted a closed adoption, that you were a college student who wasn't ready for motherhood." "I wanted you more than anything," I whispered. "Not a day has passed that I haven't thought about. You wondered where you were, if you were happy." "I was happy," she assured me. "My parents, David and Susan Anderson, they're good people. They loved me completely. They're supportive of me finding you. They just didn't know the truth either." We talked for 6 hours that first night, discovering shared mannerisms through the screen. The way we both tucked hair behind our ear when thinking, how we used our hands when explaining something important, our identical taste in photography, and classic films. "I'm studying film at UCLA, she told me. Documentary filmmaking specifically. I guess creative genes run in the family. Tyler, your birth father, was always drawing. Incredible talent." I hesitated. "Would you want to know about him too?" "Absolutely. Is contact with him possible?" I admitted I hadn't spoken to Tyler since before she was born. "My father threatened him, paid his family to move away. He never even knew I was pregnant." Another piece of the puzzle that had been hidden from all of us. A week later, I flew to Seattle where Lily lived with her adoptive parents during school breaks. The moment in the airport when we embraced for the first time I'd held my daughter since those brief minutes after her birth, was both healing and heartbreaking. 20 years of separation collapsed in an instant. We spent the day in a quiet coffee shop talking for hours, discovering each other. She showed me childhood photos on her phone, ballet recitals, soccer games, family vacations. A happy life. I showed her the birthday cupcake portraits I'd taken each year on her birthday, the evidence of my constant remembrance. "I felt it," she said, studying the progression of images. "Sometimes I'd get sad for no reason, usually around my birthday. Mom, Susan, said I was just sensitive. But I think maybe it was you, missing me." When she mentioned ongoing medical issues, unexplained fatigue, joint pain, that her doctors suspected might be genetic, our reunion took on additional urgency. "Has anyone in your family had autoimmune issues?" she asked. The question triggered a memory. "My grandmother, your great-grandmother Eliza, she had similar symptoms. They eventually diagnosed her with lupus." Lily's eyes widened. "That's what they've been testing me for. This could be really important information for my treatment." The next day, I met David and Susan Anderson in their comfortable suburban home. They welcomed me with cautious warmth, clearly protective of Lily, but willing to bridge the 20-year gap between us. "We always told Lily she was adopted," Susan explained as we sat in their living room. "We wanted her to know how special she was, how much she was wanted. The lawyer told us you were young, but had made a thoughtful decision for your child's future," David added. "We had no idea about the coercion. When David mentioned they'd paid triple the normal adoption fees for an expedited, guaranteed placement, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. My father had profited from my pain. As we went through Lily's adoption paperwork together, we found disturbing inconsistencies. My signature had been forged on several documents. Medical history forms were deliberately vague or missing entirely. What should have been a transparent, ethical adoption had been manipulated at every turn. "This could have had serious consequences for Lily's health," Susan said, visibly distressed. "If she does have lupus like your grandmother, early intervention is crucial." The realization that my parents had not only taken my child but potentially endangered her health by withholding crucial medical information ignited a fury I'd never fully allowed myself to feel. That evening, as Lily and I walked along the Seattle waterfront, she made an unexpected suggestion. "Your parents' 40th anniversary is coming up, right? You mentioned getting an invitation." I nodded. "A formality. They know I won't come. What if we both went?" Her expression was determined. "I want to meet the people who decided I shouldn't know you, and I want them to see what they took from both of us." The idea was terrifying and exhilarating. After 20 years of silence and secrets, the truth would finally be spoken aloud. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." Lily took my hand, our identical fingers intertwining. "I'm sure. Some secrets shouldn't stay buried. And I think we both need this closure to move forward." Looking into the eyes so like Tyler's but set in a face that echoed my own, I nodded. "Then let's do it. Together." After our decision to confront my parents at their anniversary gala, Lily and I spent the next 2 weeks meticulously planning. We sat in my hotel room in Seattle, takeout containers scattered across the bed as I sketched the layout of my parents' sprawling colonial home on hotel stationery. "The main ballroom is here," I said, marking an X on the crude floor plan. "Dad converted the indoor pool area years ago for Mom's charity events. They'll have at least 100 guests, all dressed to the nines." Lily studied the drawing, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear, exactly as I did when concentrating. "What time will they do the toast? That seems like the perfect moment." Knowing Mom, she'll schedule it for exactly 8:30. She times these events down to the minute. I pulled up the formal invitation on my phone, heavy cream cardstock digitized for my records. "The Richard and Catherine Wilson request the honor of your presence to celebrate 40 years of marriage." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. A marriage built on appearances celebrating its longevity while the damage it caused sat planning. Retribution. "They have no idea you're coming, right?" Lily asked. "None. I never respond to these invitations. They'll be shocked to see me, let alone with you." As our planning deepened, so did our investigation into exactly what had happened 20 years ago. Lily's research skills proved extraordinary, another trait she hadn't inherited from me. "I found something interesting," she said one evening, her laptop glowing in the dimly lit hotel room. "Your grandmother Eliza's will. It's public record." I moved to sit beside her, our shoulders touching. "What about it?" "She established a trust specifically for Emma Wilson's future children." "Did you know about this?" I shook my head. "No. After she tried to help me during my pregnancy, Dad limited my contact with her. She died when I was in college. Well, according to these records, the trust was dissolved and folded into something called the Wilson Family Foundation 3 years after her death. Your father was the executor. The realization hit like a physical blow. He stole from you. Money that was meant for you, he just took." Lily's expression hardened. "Add it to the list of things he needs to answer for." Our search for answers led us to Phoenix, Arizona, where a private investigator had located Tyler Adams. My stomach twisted with anxiety as we waited in a quiet coffee shop near his workplace. What would he think of me after all these years? Would he believe I'd given our baby away willingly? The man who walked through the door was both familiar and a stranger. Tyler's boyish face had matured, lines at the corners of his eyes, his dark hair cropped short now instead of the shaggy style he'd worn as a teenager. He stopped dead when he saw me, recognition and disbelief crossing his features. "Emma?" His voice was deeper than I remembered. "Hi, Tyler." I stood awkwardly, unsure whether to hug him or shake his hand. "Thank you for meeting us." His eyes shifted to Lily, widening slightly as he took in her features, his eyes in my face. "I'm Lily," she said, extending her hand. "Your daughter." The three of us talked for hours. Tyler described how my father had shown up at his family's apartment days after I was sent away, accompanied by a police officer. He said he could charge me with statutory rape, even though we were both 17. Said he'd make sure I never got into college, never got a decent job. Tyler's hands curled around his coffee mug. My parents were terrified. Dad had just lost his job. Mom was sick. When your father offered relocation money, they took it. Did you know I was pregnant? I asked the question that had haunted me for 20 years. Tyler shook his head, pain evident in his expression. I had no idea. By the time I heard rumors, we were halfway across the country and my calls to your house were blocked. I tried, Emma. God, I tried to reach you. Another relationship destroyed by my father's manipulation. As we continued unraveling the past, I reached out to my estranged brother Michael, who had been away at college during my pregnancy. We hadn't spoken in years, not since he sided with our parents during the argument over my photography book. To my surprise, he agreed to meet at a diner halfway between Boston and his Connecticut home. The conversation was strained at first, his skepticism evident. You always had a flair for drama, Emma, he said, stirring his coffee endlessly. Are you sure you're not exaggerating what happened? I slid a folder across the table, copies of the forged adoption papers, medical records from Peaceful Horizons, the documents we'd gathered about Grandma Eliza's misappropriated trust. I didn't imagine this, Michael. They erased my child from our family history and have been lying about it for 20 years. He reviewed the paperwork silently, his expression darkening. Jesus Christ, he muttered finally. I knew Dad could be controlling, but this... There's more, I said quietly. Mom's been keeping tabs on Lily her entire life. She has school. Photos, report cards, medical information, all while denying me any knowledge of my own daughter. Michael ran a hand over his face. That explains the locked cabinet in Dad's office. He nearly took my head off when I went in there looking for stamps last Christmas. He hesitated. I can get you into that cabinet, and I can get you both into the anniversary party without them knowing beforehand. Why would you help us? I asked, suspicious after years of distance. His eyes met mine, regret evident. Because Dad always said you had a mental breakdown in senior year. I believed him. I should have questioned that. I should have been there for you. With Michael's help, we discovered my mother kept a hidden scrapbook of Lily's life. School. Photos and milestone information secretly purchased from a private investigator who'd maintained surveillance on the Anderson family for years. The violation was breathtaking in its scope. She's been watching you your whole life, I told Lily as we examined the scrapbook in my brother's apartment, while simultaneously making sure I couldn't find you. Lily turned the pages slowly, her expression unreadable. It's so twisted. She wanted to know about me but didn't want me to exist in your life. Control, Michael said from across the room. It's always been about control with them. As the anniversary gala approached, our plan took final form. Michael added Lily to the catering staff list as a photographer's assistant, while I would enter as part of the hired photography team. My professional credentials making this easy to arrange. The night before the event, anxiety overwhelmed me. Sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, I buried my face in my hands. What if this just makes everything worse? I asked. What if we're just creating more trauma for everyone? Lily sat beside me, her warm hand on my back. This isn't about revenge, Mom? The word still sounded new and precious from her lips. This is about truth. People who abuse power should face consequences. We're not doing anything except speaking truth in a room full of people who've been fed lies. The next morning, as we dressed for our separate roles, Lily handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a silver bracelet with 2 intertwined hearts. One with her birthstone, one with mine. No matter what happens tonight, we found each other, she said, as she helped me fasten it. That's what matters most. We arrived separately at the country club venue. my heart pounding as I entered through the service entrance, camera bag over my shoulder. 20 years of silence and secrets were about to end. The country club ballroom gleamed with wealth and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements in my mother's signature white and gold. A string quartet played in the corner while waitstaff circulated with champagne flutes and canapes. Slipped in with the photography team, my credentials and professional equipment ensuring no one looked twice at me. The lead photographer, unaware of my connection to the event, assigned me to capture candid guest photos while he handled the formal shots of my parents. "They're very particular," he warned. "The wife especially wants everything perfect." "I'm she." "Familiar with the type," I replied, adjusting my lens. Through my camera viewfinder, I observed my parents working the room like seasoned politicians. Dad, distinguished in his tuxedo, silver hair perfectly coiffed, laughing with a group of judges and attorneys. Mom, elegant in champagne-colored silk, accepting compliments on the event's perfection with practiced modesty. They looked exactly as they always had. Polished, successful, admired. The perfect façade intact, with no hint of the destruction they'd caused. I circulated through the crowd, capturing photos while listening to snippets of conversation. "Richard's on the short list for the Supreme Court, you know," a silver-haired man confided to his companion. "Announcement expected any day now." So that explained the timing of this lavish celebration. Another career advancement, another step, up the ladder of success and respectability that had always mattered more than anything, or anyone, else. Through a service entrance, I spotted Lily in her catering uniform, hair pulled back severely, moving efficiently between the kitchen and the dining area. Our eyes met briefly across the room, a moment of silent communication before we both returned to our roles. An hour into the event, my luck ran out. Mom spotted me photographing a group of her garden club friends, her champagne flute freezing, halfway to her lips. She excused herself quickly and approached, her smile fixed but her eyes cold with panic. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, gripping my elbow and steering me toward a quiet corner. "You weren't invited." I lowered my camera, meeting her gaze steadily. "I'm the second photographer." "Surprise." "This is completely inappropriate. You need to leave." Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my arm. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Mother. 40 years of marriage is quite an achievement. Almost as impressive as 20 years of lies." Color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." By the way, Lily's latest school photos don't do her justice. The ones in your secret scrapbook. She's much more beautiful in person. Mom's composure faltered, her eyes darting around to ensure no one was listening. "You're being ridiculous. We agreed never to discuss—" "No, you and Dad agreed. I never got a choice. But things are different now." Before she could respond, the crystal sound of silver against glass rang out. Dad was preparing for the toast, gathering everyone's attention. Mom's eyes widened in alarm. "Whatever you're planning, don't. Richard's Supreme Court nomination is exactly why this needs to happen," I finished for her. "Some secrets shouldn't stay buried." The crowd quieted as Dad took his position at the head table, Mom hurrying back to his side, whispering urgently in his ear. He frowned slightly but shook her off, raising his glass. "Catherine and I want to thank you all for sharing this milestone with us," he began, voice resonant with judicial authority. "Marriage, like a successful career, requires commitment to principles, integrity, family values, the willingness to make hard choices for the greater good." I caught Lily's eye across the room and nodded slightly. She disappeared into the kitchen as Dad continued. "The legacy we leave isn't just in our professional accomplishments, but in the family we build, the values we instill in our children." This was the moment. I moved to the center of the room, directly in Dad's line of sight. "Speaking of children," I said, my voice carrying clearly. I'd like to make a toast too. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dad's face hardened, but he was too skilled a public figure to make a scene. Emma, what a surprise. Ladies and gentlemen, our daughter has joined us unexpectedly. His tone suggested this was a planned, pleasant surprise rather than an ambush. I'm not alone, I said as Lily emerged from the kitchen, no longer in her catering uniform but in the elegant blue dress we'd packed for this moment. She walked to my side, her chin held high. The resemblance between us was unmistakable. Mom's champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "She looks just like you," she whispered, face draining of color. "This is Lily," I said to the now silent crowd. "My daughter." "Your granddaughter," I added, looking directly at my parents. "The one you forced me to give up 20 years ago. The one whose existence you've denied while secretly keeping tabs on her entire life." The silence was absolute. Dad's judicial mask slipped for an instant before he recovered, moving toward us with a tight smile. "Emma's always had a flair for the dramatic," he said to the stunned guests. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately." "No more privacy," Lily spoke for the first time, her voice steady despite the tension. "Hello, grandparents. I've been waiting my whole life to meet you, though it seems you've been keeping tabs on me without my knowledge." She held up her phone, displaying photos of the scrapbook Michael had helped us recover. 20 years of my school pictures, medical records, report cards, all collected by people you paid to spy on me and my adoptive family. Gasps and whispers spread through the crowd. A woman I recognized as my mother's oldest friend stepped forward. "Catherine, what is she talking about?" Mom's carefully constructed poise crumbled. "This isn't the time or place." "It wasn't the time or place when I was 17 and pregnant either," I interjected. "Or when you sent me away to that facility. Or when Dad forced me to sign adoption papers while I was still drugged after giving birth." Dad stepped between us and the crowd, his back to the guests, voice low and threatening. "You're making a scene that you'll regret. Think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it," I said quietly. "For 20 years, I've thought about it. While you were advancing your career and maintaining appearances, I've lived with the hole you tore in my life. And now I discover you've been withholding medical information that could have helped Lily years ago." "Medical information?" A sharp voice cut through the tension. A tall man in wire-rimmed glasses stepped forward, my father's colleague from the federal bench. "Richard, what is she talking about?" "Nothing of consequence, James," Dad said dismissively. "A family misunderstanding." "Lupus," Lily said clearly. "I've been showing symptoms for years. Emma's grandmother, my great-grandmother, had it, but that information was deliberately kept from my medical records. Information that could have led to earlier intervention and treatment." The murmurs grew louder. A journalist I recognized from the local paper was taking notes, phone recording discreetly in her hand. "The Supreme Court nomination," someone whispered loudly enough to be heard. Dad's head snapped toward the voice, panic flashing across his features. "That's what this is really about," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "You're trying to destroy me." "No," I said, pulling free. "I'm trying to reclaim what you stole from us. The truth." Security personnel approached, summoned by someone in the increasingly uncomfortable crowd. Dad saw an opportunity. "Please escort my daughter and her friend outside. They're disrupting a private event." The security guard looked uncertain, glancing between us. "Sir, this seems like a family matter. I am a federal judge," Dad snapped. "Do as I say." In that moment of naked authority, the mask slipped completely. The guests saw not the respected jurist, but the controlling man who had orchestrated 20 years of deception. Phones were recording now, the moment spiraling beyond his capacity to contain it. Mom stepped forward, surprising everyone. "Stop." Her voice was barely audible at first, then stronger. "Richard, stop. She turned to me, then to Lily, her carefully maintained façade crumbling at last. "She does look just like you," she whispered, reaching a trembling hand toward Lily's face, before dropping it. "I told him this would come back to haunt us. I told him." The security guards backed away awkwardly. The party was effectively over, guests whispering among themselves as they gathered purses and jackets, eager to escape the unfolding family drama. Dad stood alone at the head table, watching his carefully constructed world begin to unravel. The Supreme Court nomination that had been all but guaranteed now hung in precarious balance as the first tweets about the evening's revelations began circulating. As we left the ballroom, Michael appeared at my side. "It's done," he said quietly. "For better or worse." Lily slipped her hand into mine. "For better," she said firmly. "The truth is always better." The scandal broke nationally within hours. My father withdrew from Supreme Court consideration the following morning, citing "family matters requiring my attention," a tepid phrase that fooled no one in the age of social media and smartphone videos. Mom checked into what was publicly described as a wellness retreat, but was actually an exclusive treatment center for anxiety and depression. The facade she'd maintained for decades had crumbled under the weight of exposed truth. Meanwhile, Lily and I faced unexpected publicity. A local news segment about our reunion story went viral, bringing interview requests and social media attention. We declined most, protective of the fragile relationship we were building, though Lily admitted her film school classmates were completely freaking out over the drama. "Not exactly how I planned to become famous," she joked during one of our daily phone calls. Back in Seattle with her adoptive parents, she was processing the whirlwind events while I'd returned temporarily to Boston. Family reactions split predictably. Dad's brother Thomas called to inform me I was no longer welcome at family gatherings for humiliating your father publicly. Mom's sister Elizabeth, however, reached out with a different message. "I always wondered what happened during those months you were away," she said when we met for coffee. Catherine would change the subject whenever I asked. I should have pushed harder. The most difficult conversations were with extended family members meeting Lily for the first time, some embracing her immediately while others struggled with what her existence revealed about the family they thought they knew. My cousin Rebecca summed it up during a particularly tense family dinner. "It's not just that Uncle Richard and Aunt," Catherine lied. "It's that we all accepted a version of events that never made sense if we'd actually thought about it. We're complicit too." 2 weeks after the anniversary party, Tyler flew east to meet Lily properly. The three of us spent an awkward but healing day together in Boston, piecing together the separate lives we'd lived and the connections that could never be severed. "She has your artistic eye," I told Tyler as we watched Lily photograph the harbor at sunset. "And your stubbornness," he replied with a smile. "Remember when you insisted on climbing that water tower to get the perfect shot of the sunrise? You were terrified we'd get arrested. We almost did." These moments of shared memory created bridges across the 20-year void, helping Lily understand the people her birth parents had been before Judge Wilson's intervention tore their lives apart. The legal consequences unfolded gradually. An investigation into my father's judicial conduct revealed a troubling pattern of using his position to manipulate family court cases. A reporter uncovered 3 other instances where he'd intervened in adoptions involving prominent families, sealing records improperly and directing outcomes from behind the scenes. "This isn't about one family drama," the investigative report concluded. "This is about abuse of judicial power affecting multiple vulnerable young women and children." The Judicial Review Board's findings eventually led to my father's disbarment, a stunning fall for a man once considered Supreme Court material. He retreated to their vacation home in the Berkshires, refusing all contact with me or Lily. Meanwhile, Michael helped us petition to reclaim the trust grandmother Eliza had established, which Richard had diverted into his foundation. The court ruled in our favor, restoring funds that had been intended for Lily all along. "I want to use it to help young mothers," Lily suggested during a three-way call with me and David and Susan Anderson. "Create a foundation supporting ethical adoptions and family reunification." "That's perfect," Susan said warmly. The Andersons had been remarkably supportive throughout the upheaval, secure enough in their relationship with Lily to embrace the extension of her family rather than feel threatened by it. With her full medical history finally available, Lily received proper treatment for her condition, which early tests confirmed was indeed lupus. "If we'd known your family history earlier," her doctor explained, "we could have started treatment 2 years ago when symptoms first appeared." The knowledge that my parents' deception had directly impacted Lily's health cemented my resolve to maintain the separation from my father, though my feelings about Mom were more complicated. 6 months after the confrontation, she reached out, through Michael. "She's been in intensive therapy," he told me over the phone. "She wants to meet with you and Lily. She says she has things to tell you both." The meeting took place at a neutral location, a private room at a quiet tea house halfway between Boston and Connecticut. Mom looked different, thinner, less perfectly composed, more human somehow without the designer clothes and carefully maintained appearance that had been her armor. "Thank you for coming," she said when we entered, rising uncertainly. "Both of you." The conversation was painful and halting. Mom explained how she'd justified their actions to herself over the years, convincing herself they were protecting my future, that closed adoption was cleaner, that knowledge would only hurt everyone involved. "I was wrong," she admitted, tears sliding down her face. "I knew it was wrong even then, but I was too afraid of losing your father, of losing our position in society. I chose cowardice." "Did you ever consider how I felt?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Losing my child? Being told to pretend it never happened?" "I told myself you'd forget, move on, but then I couldn't forget either." She turned to Lily. "I started getting the updates as a way to convince myself you were happy, thriving, that our decision was justified. But seeing you grow up in photographs while watching Emma suffer, I knew. I always knew we'd done something unforgivable." "Is that why you kept the scrapbook hidden from Dad?" I asked. She nodded. "He wanted a complete break, said it was dangerous to maintain any connection, even one-sided. But I couldn't let go entirely." To my surprise, Lily reached across the table and took her hand. "I had a good life. My parents loved me completely. But Emma deserved to know me, and I deserved to know her. That choice should never have been taken from us." "No," Mom agreed quietly. "It shouldn't have." As for Dad, his reckoning came later and more reluctantly. After months of silence, he requested a private meeting with me. No Lily, no Catherine, just the two of us in the study of the house where I'd grown up. He'd aged dramatically, the powerful judge now diminished without his position and authority. When I entered, he was standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "You've destroyed everything I built," he said without turning around. "You destroyed it yourself," I replied calmly. "Every time you chose your career and reputation over basic human decency." He turned then, anger flashing. "I was protecting you, 17, unmarried, with your whole future ahead of you. It wasn't your choice to make. Parents make choices for their children all the time. Not like that, not by force." The argument went in circles until exhaustion set in. Finally, he sank into his leather chair, looking defeated. "I thought I was protecting you," he said, his voice smaller. "Your mother kept saying we were doing the wrong thing, but I convinced her. I was so certain I knew best." "You were protecting yourself," I corrected him. "Your career, your reputation." He didn't deny it. After a long silence, he asked, Does she seem happy?" "Lily?" "Yes. Despite everything, she's remarkable. She looks like you." The admission seemed to cost him something. In the videos from the party, like you at that age, it wasn't an apology, not really, but it was an acknowledgement, however small, of what he'd taken from both of us. A year after the confrontation, an uneasy peace had settled over our extended family. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. Cautious progress with Mom, stilted formality with Dad. But a new family had formed around Lily. Me, Tyler, the Andersons, Michael, even Mom on her better days, creating a blended network of support and love. For Lily's college graduation, we all gathered. An awkward but meaningful assembly of her many parents and relatives. As we watched her accept her diploma in film studies, Tyler leaned over and whispered, "She got the best of all of us, somehow." I nodded, thinking of the documentary Lily was already filming about family reunification and the foundation we'd established with grandmother Eliza's recovered trust. From the greatest trauma of my life had emerged my greatest joy, not just in finding my daughter, but in watching her forge her own path with clarity and purpose. The final scene of our story unfolded at a photography exhibition in New York. My new collection, Reunited, featured pairs of portraits, birth parents and children separated by adoption or other circumstances, reunited after years apart. The centerpiece was a triptych, Lily at 20, me at 17 holding newborn Hope, and the two of us together, wearing matching bracelets with intertwined hearts. As Lily introduced me before my speech, she captured the essence of our journey. My mother taught me that while truth can be painful, living in lies is far more destructive. Some families are born, others are broken, but the strongest are those rebuilt on honesty and choice. I looked out at the audience, Tyler and the Andersons in the front row, Michael and his wife nearby, even Mom sitting quietly in the back, and felt the completion of a circle that had begun in that bathroom 22 years ago with two pink lines on a plastic stick. Truth, I agreed, embracing my daughter before stepping to the microphone. Truth and choice. That's the legacy I hope we leave. What would you do if someone stole 20 years of connection with your child? Could you forgive, or would you demand justice no matter the cost? If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps bring more untold stories to light.